And good evening, everybody, and welcome to College Football Wraparound. I am Cooper Naylor, and tonight we're going to be talking about spring games, and we are going to be talking about Arch Manning and his decision to opt out of the college football video game. Also, I do want to tell you, next week's episode will be pre-recorded because I will be in Washington, D.C., so expect that video. I'm going to talk a little bit about Nick Saban's decision to retire, Chip Kelly's decision to leave UCLA and go to Ohio State as the offensive coordinator, and much more on those topics. So that's what you can expect from our show next Wednesday night, which again will be pre-recorded. I will be in Washington, D.C., and then not this Sunday, but the next Sunday will be a pre-recorded video, which I hope to get some content up there in DC to post here on the channel. We will wait and see what that has in store. But for now, we're talking about college football wraparound. Of course, Cooper Naylor Show is on YouTube exclusive. And of course, right here, college football wraparound is YouTube and Rumble. So, check out our videos on whichever platform you choose to find us at. So, tonight, let's go ahead and get into our spring games we're going to be talking about. And I do have some listed here that I think you should be interested in. First of all, in the chat, if you will, let me know who is a team that you're at that you really want to see this spring and see what they look like, because I think I've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 8 teams right here. And I mean, there's probably millions more that I could probably list off that I want to see, but I've got 8 right here. So in the chat, if you want to, let me know who is some teams that you really would love to watch in the spring games, because spring football is all about figuring out an idea of what you may see this fall. Now, to think that we're already this close to spring games is kind of crazy. Saturday is the beginning of them, and I can't remember who I saw that it was. If you have that in the chat, you can put that in the chat as well to let our viewers know. But yeah, so we're going to dive into some spring games and talk about Arch Manning. So let's talk about these spring games. So first one I want to talk about, and it comes April 6th, which is exactly a month from tonight, is the Auburn Tigers. They're going to be having their spring game. It's interesting because I thought that they played well against some teams, and then they, of course, struggled against others. Going into the second year of Hugh Freeze, I think there's going to be a lot of optimism with the Auburn Tigers. I think it's interesting to note, I think they've picked up some talent that's going to be really interesting through recruiting and transfer portal. And then I believe that Auburn has brought in some competition for Peyton Thorne. I'm going to just see real quick, because my phone is really just buzzing right now. But either way, so I think it's going to be interesting to see, because you don't normally, you can kind of get an idea for what quarterback position, for instance. You can get an idea for who is better than who early on. And so, I think that Auburn, it's interesting to see, can they really take that next step with Hugh Freeze? Because I think the big thing is I think Auburn last year, and they've been good, had a good run game for a long time. I feel like the big thing for Auburn offensively is going to be the passing game. I feel like that's got to be the thing they've got to figure out. And I think they got a great coach to do it with. Hugh Freeze, as most know, he is an incredible head coach, and really in the SEC, I think he fits the mold of the SEC. So that's the thing that I think people really have found. And so and I think that's the reason, if you look at Hugh Freeze, he's coached in the SEC before with Ole Miss. So I think people kind of have an idea of he has a lot of potential to have a really good team there on the plains of Auburn. So I think Auburn is a team to watch this spring. Now, I will say I don't think I will be able to watch many of these spring games. I've got a lot of stuff coming up this spring. So, of course, going to be interesting, though, because I think Auburn, if you are able to see the spring games, Auburn's going to be interesting to watch. Turning attention now to our next team, Ohio State. Now, of course, I mentioned Chip Kelly a minute ago, but he's a guy you're going to want to watch for that offense, see what possibly they may do. And really, the interesting thing is, if Will Howard is the guy for Ohio State, which I believe he's pretty much, Will Howard's their guy. He transferred there to be the starter for a reason. It still is questionable. I mean, when you consider the fact of all these other quarterbacks you have, I mean, Devin Brown, I believe you have Julian Sayin, who transferred in from Alabama. And then the other guy, I can't remember his name. Either way, that's the big thing. I want to see what does the offense look like with Will Howard being the quarterback. And the way Chip Kelly schemes things up for Ohio State this season is going to be very interesting, I think. And so the spring game, most people think, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, I think it does, it gives that developmental stage, like see where the players are at. And that's okay. And that's my thing is like spring games are meant to be developmental. Bowl games are meant to be a season ending reward. So, I mean, before you think that, oh, now Cooper's in for the whole developmental game, well, I'm okay with the spring game because this is a spring game. Although I do think that with the changing landscape of college football, really what you should be doing the spring games is why don't you give a chance for an FCS school, to come, like, okay, if you're Alabama, why don't you give a chance to like Mercer to come to play in the spring and do it that way? Like, that would be interesting, I think. Plus, you would incentivize giving money to those little schools that you already do anyway. And then you look at the schedule within the regular season, and you wouldn't have that cupcake. So, I mean, that could be something I think people should look at. And so, hey, I think it'd be cool. Either way, Ohio State, though, I think it just comes down to I want to see what Will Howard and the Ohio State offense really looks like. I mean, they've got great talent receiver-wise, running back-wise. It's just going to be an interesting thing to see Ohio State this spring. Then, of course, Alabama is on there. Since Saban retired, I believe, April 13th, for pretty much any football fan has been marked for every single person because, let's be honest, Kalen DeBoer. I think most everybody wants to see what is Alabama's offense going to look like this season. And then what really the big thing is, because I think a lot of people realize too, the defense at Washington last year was not incredible. And so I think that's one thing people are concerned about is defensive wise. Even though Alabama's got the talent, how's the coaching around the defense? So I think that's the two main storylines for Alabama is I think what has Kalen DeBoer brought in to improve with that offense as far as Jalen Milroe is concerned and as far as the offensive line is concerned. how has that Alabama offense improved this spring? And then here's the thing. Defensive-wise, coaching is going to be key. So how is the coaching within the defense? That's going to be interesting, I think, for a lot of people, because I think it's really going to be the big circle here for whether or not Alabama will have success. Now, I still believe Alabama is going to be one of the top teams in college football no matter what this season, because you still have, most of Saban's talent there. So as far as player-wise. So Alabama's fine. Kellen DeBoer is a great coach. And so I feel like Alabama's going to come out in that spring game and make a statement. And really, I think when you've seen prior spring games from Alabama and people's been talking about how Alabama's lacked, I just got this gut feeling Alabama's going to have this rejuvenated sense to them, and things are going to be changed in Tuscaloosa, and it's going to look – it's going to be one of the best spring games you've seen. I think that's what you're going to see from Alabama. And then moving on to the Georgia Bulldogs. As always, Georgia – here's the thing I think people are going to have to realize. And I think they've pretty much realized this for about a year and a half now. But Georgia, I think, possibly is going to take the mantle from Alabama as far as being that top dog and the standard within college football. Now, you may be asking me, well, Cooper, they missed the playoff last year. But let's be honest, okay? When it comes down to if you were playing betting odds, because, really with the 4-team playoff system, it was, let's get the 4 best teams. There could be an argument made, even though Georgia lost their conference championship game, Georgia was still better than, let's say, Michigan. Even though Michigan won the championship, they probably were still better than Michigan. They probably still were better than Washington. Really, had Alabama not beaten them, Georgia would have been number 1. It's so clear as day, Georgia was probably the best team in the sport, but they missed out because they lost their conference championship game. And I hate to tell all those Florida State people, but Georgia should have jumped them even more than probably what Alabama did, even though Alabama beat them in the SEC championship game. Georgia was probably a better team than Alabama, but Alabama won the game. So that's the thing you got to keep in mind. But Georgia, I think it's going to be fine. You're losing Brock Bowers, incredible talent, tight end. I think they're going to be fine. Georgia's got enough talent. They are as deep as what Saban's best Alabama teams were. That's just because Kirby Smart is an incredible coach. So Georgia, even though I feel like they're fine, still going to be interesting to see how they show up in the spring and, who basically takes over the role of being Brock Bowers. That's going to be interesting here for the majority of what Georgia does next season, I think. So, all right, moving on. The Michigan Wolverines. I'll tell you this. I don't think they're going to be as good as what they were last year. Yeah, they're not going to be as good. What are we kidding? Jim Harbaugh brought an undefeated season in a national championship to Michigan. And we're expecting Sharon Moore to continue that? No. Michigan will not. Now, do I think they have a chance at beating Ohio State at the end of the year? Yeah, I think they do. And do I think that Michigan or Ohio State's the best team in the Big Ten this season? Coming up this season? To be honest with you, the more I start watching, no. Ohio State and Michigan are not the best 2 teams in the Big Ten right now. they could be in the top 3. But you know who's number 1 right now in my mind? It's the Oregon Ducks. Oregon is the best team in the Big Ten. So when I say Michigan's interesting to watch, they truly are, because they are losing a lot of talent to the NFL. So what is this team going to look like? I think that's the question. I think the majority of people are going to see is, what does the Michigan Wolverines look like next season? Now, I think for the majority of what you're going to see from now on, you're going to see 8-4, 7-5. That's the Michigan you're going to get, and that's the Michigan you've seen for a long time before these last 3 years. So, really, I think that's what you got to keep in mind, and I still think Michigan's an interesting watch. And then you got Notre Dame. Of course, Notre Dame, always something fun to watch in the spring, and to be honest with you, I think when it all is said and done, Notre Dame is a team that I believe will be it's just going to be so interesting to see how everything plays out. I believe they picked up Riley Leonard out of the transfer portal. He, of course, was the star quarterback for the Duke Blue Devils last year with their head coach, who was Mike Elko. So I think Riley Leonard is interesting to Notre Dame. I just want to see how it fits in that system. Now, of course, as you remember, Sam Hartman was the quarterback last season at Notre Dame and got off to a great start, but then, of course, hit bumps in the road, and that kind of derailed the season for the Fighting Irish. So Notre Dame is going to be interesting to watch this year in the spring game. Then, I mentioned Mike Elko. Well, Texas A&M. Texas A&M this season is going to be very interesting. You got Mike Elko coming in as the head coach. Of course, Jimbo fired. So Mike Elko, he took a Duke Blue Devils team that really wasn't expected to do anything, and he's really made them. He turned it into a pretty. For Duke standards, pretty good. So here's the thing. I think Mike Elko has a chance to make Texas A&M really good. Now, do I think it's this season? Not at all. I think if you're a Texas A&M fan, what you got to expect is 7-5 or 8-4. About what the best of Jimbo Fisher was going to give you. But how good do I think they could be in 2 to 3 years? They could be up there as some of the best teams in college football. Let's be honest, with a 12-team system, they could be 8-4 and still make the playoff. And let's be honest about ourselves, because in about 3 years, it's going to be 14 or 16 teams in the playoff. So, yeah, A&M's got a chance. They've got a real chance to make the playoff. And so, they're going to be an interesting watch this spring with Mike Elko coming in. So, keep your eye on that one. And then finally, the Texas Longhorns, again, are, of course, really interesting. Honestly, the big question mark here is Arch Manning, how good does he do in the spring game? And then how long? Because Quinn Ewers is coming back. And Arch Manning, has been talked up all these years. When is he going to get to play is a real question, I think. And so I think that's going to be a big question as far as when he gets to play. And then as far as, how good can this Texas team really be? Because, he's definitely, I think he's going to move himself into that second string spot for this season. And that could serve as a big time deal for him because let's be honest, Quinn Ewers, he's been known to get hurt here in college. So, let's be honest, Quinn Ewers If he were to get hurt next season, I mean, Arch Manning playing in the SEC as a starter for a couple weeks because of Quinn Ewers being hurt. I mean, that's what Texas, I think, is preparing Arch Manning for. And then eventually he will be the starter. He'll probably play his redshirt sophomore year as the starting quarterback and then head on to the NFL. That'll probably be what he does, knowing how good he could potentially be by the standards that everybody's talked him up to be. So that's going to be interesting watching Texas and that quarterback situation as it continues there in Austin, Texas. So that is the spring games I am looking forward to. And so right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into your chat. So I'm putting them by dates. So that you will have it. Right. Almost done here. All right. There you go. So there is the dates for those spring games so that you will see that. And, oh, there we go. For some reason, I bumped the camera button there. All right. So now, let's move on to our next topic, and it has to do with EA Sports College Football 25. And it has to do with Arch Manning because he has opted out of the video game that'll be coming out this summer. And so what does this mean? Well, first of all, I mean, I think if I'm correct, what the incentives here, what the players were going to get from the NIL deal they were going to sign with EA Sports, I believe it was like $600, and you get a free copy of the game. Well, he turned it down. He opted out of the game, and this is interesting because a guy of his caliber, in a way, I'm shocked he didn't take it because a guy like Arch Manning would be heavily used in the game. But then again, if we're being honest, how many people really, I mean, you're going to play as your favorite team regardless. Or you're going to play as some other teams that, you know, that you really like and you want to play as in that video game. So how many people are truly going to, you know, are they really going to care that Arch Manning isn't in the game? So that's a good question to pose to you. But I'll say this. In a world of NIL, I'm shocked he didn't take the money because it's, you know, because it's $600. So it's interesting for what it could be. But, you know, and of course we don't see the behind the scenes very much, but like I am interested to see what was how the decision was made to not opt into this video game. I mean, people are going to say, oh, you're not playing the game. You're just, you know, it's just a video game. Well, maybe something came up within negotiations that he didn't like, and so he didn't want to be in it. So that's going to be, I think, the talk of the town as far as the game is concerned. And so, you know, take that as you want it. But very interesting to see that he opted out of the video game. And so to be honest, it makes no difference between people who are going to play the game anyway. So, well, that is pretty much all I have for you tonight. Of course, like and subscribe to the channel. And, of course, leave a comment below about what you thought about tonight's topics. If you're, of course, it's been a fun time doing these videos for you, and I hope to continue doing it. So, just a little bit of support will help immensely with this channel. So, of course, we want to thank you for watching. Like I said, we, of course, on YouTube with the Cooper Naylor Show, we will be back Sunday night for a live edition. And then we will not be live, but we will have a pre-recorded episode of College Football Wraparound next Wednesday night. So, be ready for that. And then the next Sunday, we hope to have some kind of special content. No Cooper Naylor Show that night, but we hope to have some kind of special content that I put together from Washington, D.C. for you to have. So, of course, with that all being said, I want to thank y'all for watching, and we will see you again later. Good night, everybody.